Well, hello, gentle students, gentle readers. Today I shall talk about poetry in the novel Hongloumeng, Dream of the Red Chamber, and talk specifically about what many scholars call the cult of feelings or the cult of passion that really was codified during the Ming and Qing dynasties, and this idea, this sort of response to and part of Neo-confucianism had a great impact upon traditional Chinese literature, especially the novel Hongloumeng, Dream of the Red Chamber. Now, I want to preface this lecture, which I hope will be no more than 30 minutes. I want to preface this lecture with a bit of a warning. The things I'll talk about are a bit complicated, so this may be the most complicated lecture that I'll give, and there is a tremendous amount to say, and a lot of it is philosophy, but one cannot escape that Chinese writing, Chinese thought are very much enmeshed with one another. They're interwoven together. So the ideas that I'll be expressing today are very much part of the novel Hongloumeng, but it might not seem like that at first. So I'll perhaps divide these remarks: the cult of passion, the cult of feeling, and the cult of authenticity and genuineness. I'll probably separate them into two separate lectures. But for those of you who have read the novel Hongloumeng or who are reading the novel Hongloumeng, you will notice that Jia Baoyu and Lin Daiyu are both characters who are imbued with many feelings. Obviously, Lin Daiyu cries all the time, and Jia Baoyu, of course, is easy to stamp his feet and to go into fits about things. But I wanted to read a poem from the 3rd century Chinese poet Cao Zhi. If I read this poem to you, this is from the 3rd century. If I read this poem to you, listen carefully, because you will see much within this 3rd century poem by Cao Zhi that will make one who reads traditional Chinese literature, especially Hongloumeng, that will make one think, goodness, this could have appeared in the novel Hongloumeng. But it's a poem, I think, translated by George W. Kent, and this is quite a lovely translation. It's a poem very much about Qing passion, or Qing in born nature, or romance. Anyway, here's the poem. A beautiful girl, charming and modest, picks mulberry leaves by the fork in the road. The tender branches confusedly move. The falling leaves, how they flutter. She rolls up her sleeve and shows a bare arm. Round her wrist is a gold bracelet. On her head is a golden bird hairpin. At her waist hangs kingfisher green jade. Bright pearls adorn her jade-like body. Coral is intermixed with green jewels. Her silk gauze dress, how whirl-blown, twirl-blown. Her light apron spins in the wind. As she looks about, her eyes radiate brilliance. As she whistles, her breath seems orchid-scented. Riders by are stopped in their carriages. Those stopped to rest forget to eat. May I ask where this girl lives? So by the southern gate of the city. Her blue-green house is on the great road, with its high gate double-bolted. Her appearance is that of the radiant morning sun. Who wishes not to look at her good face? What has the go-between been doing? The matter of jade and silk was not settled in time. This fine girl admires a high sense of propriety, but finding a worthy man is really most difficult. How many people emptily babble and babble? How would they understand her intentions? In her best years, she sits in her rooms, and in the middle of the night, she sighs deeply. Well, if that's not a poem about passion and feelings, I don't know what is. So about this topic, first we need to bear in mind that, and I'll look at my notes quite often in this one because there's so much to say, and this is rather a complicated topic, But and perhaps I should say this too. This may be one of the most important lectures I'll give to access the novel Hongloumeng. You may need to listen to this or watch this more than once. Well, first we need to bear in mind that the intellectual community of the late Ming, 1368 to 1644, and the early Qing, was still immersed in the rigidity of Song Dynasty Neo-Confucianism. So the majority of late imperial Chinese intellectuals were certainly Neo-Confucian. They followed the ideas of Juxi. One counter reaction was a movement often called the cult of Qing, right? Qing, or the cult of feeling in some translations. But early on, and this is where it gets a bit complicated, early on the character Qing was related to the character Xing, which means inborn nature. If you look at the chalkboard clip in the very beginning of this lecture, you'll see these two characters, Qing, which means feeling or passion, and we can sort of use both of those words to translate Qing, passion or feeling, and then the character Xing, which implies one's inborn nature. So defining these terms is complicated, but early on these two characters, Qing and Xing, are really related to one another. Thus, we feel that which we by nature are. So for example, in Shunzi, we have this brief little statement in Shunzi. And Shunzi will actually be influential in how we think about the interplay between Qing and Xing, between feelings or passion and inborn nature. Shunzi wrote this: 心之好无息女爱乐之情 means something like the feelings of fondness, of hatred, of delight, anger, sorrow, and joy. These feelings are our inborn nature. So in early China, Qing and Xing overlap. Feelings and inborn nature overlap. We feel for, we enjoy, and so forth, that which is genuinely who and what we are. So our nature essentially is to feel. Feelings are part of our nature. Thus, Qing, passion or feelings, this is a manifestation of Xing, of our inborn nature. Well, this will be something that the Neo-Confucian, the Song Dynasty scholar Juxi will find a great deal of umbrage with. He will take umbrage with this concept. The principal intellectual responsible, the very principle responsible for feelings in late imperial China was Juxi. The principal intellectual for defining feelings was Juxi. Juxi argued that Xing, inborn nature, now here pay close attention. Juxi argued that Xing, inborn nature, is the state before activity. So it's the wei fa. It's that nature is what we are as humans before we do things, before activity begins, before anything is stirred up. At rest, what are we? That is what our Xing is, our nature. And once activity begins, as he translates it, yi fa, once movement happens, this is what Qing is. So nature, Xing, is while we are still, it's before action. But Qing, passion or feelings, that's what comes after action. So according to Juxi, feelings are a troublemaker, right? They're the troublemaker. Stillness is the remedy. Thus you get something like foot binding. It sort of restrains and keeps women still. So the problem for Juxi was how to make one's activities, one's Qing, one's feelings, balanced and proper. So for Juxi, our inborn nature is what we are before we are stirred into feeling. And feelings are problematic, right? So for him, he wants to figure out a way to remedy this problem. So after action begins and feelings are manifest, one must achieve what Zhu Xi called due measure. Right? Once you've enacted your qing, your passions, your feelings, there needs to be a due measure. He calls it 终结, like a centralizing of that of things, right? A balancing of things. So according to Neo-Confucians, there are two realms. Right? There is the metaphysical realm and the experiential realm. So the metaphysical realm is Xing Er Shang, that which is above the forms, and the Xing Er Xia, that which are below the forms. So things that are metaphysical include things like Xing, your inborn nature, Li, the principle, pattern of things, the Tian, heaven, right, and Jing, or peacefulness, right. The Xing Er Xia, the experiential things, those include Qi, like the energy, Dong, movement, and Qing, passion. So our inborn nature is a metaphysical thing. It is something beyond the material realm. But passion is something really related to and part of the material realm. This is a significant point in Neo-Confucianism, because Neo-Confucianism is always going to try and press us into that which is metaphysical, right? The material, it's almost a kind of dualist way of thinking in some senses, right? That is that we need to restrain ourselves from the passions that emerge from this physical realm. So in this model, the metaphysical realm, in the metaphysical realm, one dwells in a higher, more perfect state. That's in the metaphysical realm. That's where one finds 终结. That's where one finds due measure. But experiential realm, that's an evil place, right? That is, or at least that's where evil is possible. Thus, from the really classical Neo-Confucian point of view, our feelings, once they become manifest, can engender a lot of problems. Thus, in the novel Hongloumeng, we see Cao Xueqin really wrestling with this notion, this Neo-Confucian notion of an expression of feelings and keeping things in control. You know, when things get stirred up, for example, lots of problems happen. Think about chapter 9 in the novel Hongloumeng. You see a lot of yang energy, a lot of stirring up, and that stirring up results in a great deal of suffering and problems. So qing, so passion, and yu, desire, yu being desire. So we should think about the passion and desire according to Zhu Xi's, the way he thinks about it, right? Again, Zhu Xi is a Song Dynasty intellectual, one of the progenitors of Neo-Confucianism, which is a very rigid form of Confucianism, which was the dominant intellectual view during the writing of Hongloumeng, Dream of the Chamber, in the 18th century. So for Zhu Xi, Qing, this is again an element of the experiential realm, and it's very dangerous. If Qing, passion, becomes excessive, right? When passion becomes excessive, it is manifest as yu, desires, and like water, it overflows, and it overflows the dam of self-restraint. So our passions, our feelings must be controlled, so that our desires are controlled, so that self-restraint is still possible, according to Neo-Confucianism. That is, as soon as qing, as passion, is manifest, yifa, right? As soon as it's manifest, it is possible for evil to emerge. So, in late imperial Neo-Confucianism, there's a distinction that was made, that is, xing shan qing e. Passion is, inborn nature is good, but passions are evil, right? This actually, that distinction between inborn nature and passions, that originally was formulated in the Han Dynasty, but Neo-Confucianism will really exploit that principle. So the reversal of how Qing is viewed, whereas Neo-Confucians classically will just almost universally reject passions as something that can engender problems, right? There was, as there always is, there was a dialectic, right, in the Chinese intellectual realm. There was another point of view. So during the Ming Dynasty, intellectuals began to reconsider how passion, how Qing was conceived. And they began to work against the Neo-Confucian understanding, right? So you're going to see in the novel Hongloumeng both a Neo-Confucian default, right? Oh, when things are passionate, then you see problems. And you're going to also see Cao Shui-qin, in a way, himself being Baoyu, right? Cao Shui-qin sort of adopting the view of Baoyu as a counter argument against the Neo-Confucian notion that passion itself is universally bad. And I should say, as a tangent here, a side note, everything I'm saying here will be somehow related to poetry, and also within the narrative in other ways. But poetry is going to be a very significant dimension of this interplay between inborn nature and passion. So several Ming Dynasty thinkers claimed that Qing passion was not in itself a bad thing. So, for example, you have this scholar named Yang Shen, who lived 1488 to 1559. He stated that, quote, and this is Yang Shen. He said this, quote, "What will happen if one promotes inborn nature but neglects passion?" Let me start this quote again. What will happen if one promotes Xing, inborn nature, but neglects Qing, feelings? He will become dead ashes. What will happen if one is moved by Qing, passion, but forgets about Xing, inborn nature? He will become an animal, right? So if you indulge your passions, you just become an animal. But if you have no passions, then you're just what he calls dead ashes. You're really not even a human being. So suddenly with Yang Shen, you start to see a resistance to the Neo-Confucian universalism, that is, that passion is bad, feelings are bad. With Yang Shen, you start to see a recognition that things need to be balanced, right? That passion and inborn nature are both good. So that is, feelings, Qing, and inborn nature, Xing, complement each other. They keep each other in check. And then after Yang Shen, another scholar by the name of Tang Xianzu, who lived 1550 to 1616, he became a leading figure in what we call the cult of Qing, the cult of passion, which he essentially valorized passion or feelings. Ming intellectuals who advocated, these advocates of Qing feeling, looked to past thinkers to consider connections between three important concepts, right? So people who are part of this cult of passion, this cult of Qing, they considered the connections between three things. One was inborn nature, or Xing. One was feelings or passion, Qing, and desire, Yu. So your nature, your feelings, and your desire, those three things became important elements of how we think about how we should behave and what kind of person we should be. And this really is part of what Xunzi had written. Xunzi had written 信者天之救，天之救也；亲者心之治也；欲者亲之应也。Something like, if I can translate this, inborn nature is the consequence of heaven. Passion is the essence of our nature, our inborn nature. And desire is the response to our passion, right? So here, Xunzi himself conjures these three ideas, inborn nature, feelings, and desire, and puts them into a certain paradigm. And he also creates for them a hierarchy, right? You have Xing, nature, inborn nature, Qing, passion, and then desire. And according to Xunzi, they're all related. That's the significant point. They're all related. Nowhere does Xunzi, Xunzi does categorize human nature as being essentially evil, but nowhere in Xunzi does he think in the ways that Jushi will with Neo-Confucianism. But for Jushi, desire is further away from inborn nature, Xing, and thus it is essentially bad, right? So again, Zhu Xi, who is the most influential thinker, is going to make these feelings essentially bad. In essence, earlier Neo-Confucian thinking conceived of a polarity between what they called Li, or principle, the sort of principle of things, and desire. So you see that desire worked, according to Neo-Confucianism, our desires works against principle. That is the principle of how we should behave, the principle of the basic makeup of all things. But late Ming Dynasty and early Qing Dynasty thinkers began to see desire as the origin of all virtues, right? Since virtues emerge from the mind. Oh wow! Now this is significant, right? Because in the Buddhist context, desire is completely bad, right? Intellectually, we could even say that desires to be good, or in a sense, motivators of karma from a Buddhist point of view, right? So desire itself, you really can't redeem it. You can sort of redeem it in the beginning stages, right? I desire to be enlightened, I desire to get rid of my desire. Maybe you could redeem it in that way from a Buddhist point of view, but certainly here we see these cult of Qing people arguing that desire is a good thing, because to be virtuous, you have to desire to be virtuous. So all virtues begin, they emerge from the desire to be virtuous. So then you have this thinker by the name of Chen Xue, who lived 1604 to 1677. And for him, right, he'll take this a step further. He's going to invert Zhu Xi. He's going to really kick the can of Zhu Xi's thought away and completely upturn it, right? So he says that desires, when they're directed toward a virtue, they become Li, principle. So whereas the classical Neo-Confucian point of view is that principle, Li, the principle of all things, and desires are enemies, here we have Chen Xue saying that desire, when properly ordered, it really becomes principle, right? So, but then again, the word desire was so pejoratively used by the late Qing and the Qing Dynasty that they chose to use another word, right, to replace desire. That is the cult of Qing. They couldn't say desire is good. I mean, they could talk about it, desire being the origin of virtue, but they chose to use the word Qing instead of yu, because desire had become so problematized. Then again, look at Hongloumeng, right? He uses the names of characters like Lin Daiyu. Yu means jade in Lin Daiyu's name, but the word jade, yu, sounds like yu, desire. And then you have Jia Baoyu, Baoyu, the word yu is also jade in Baoyu's name, but it also is a homophone for desire. So the two main characters in the novel, Hongloumeng, their names themselves allude to the question of desire. So here's Cao Xueqin, sort of in a way redeeming desire, kind of. Desire may have been terminologically avoided, but feelings had a convenient precedence, and especially in the realm of poetry, right? So if you are an educated person and you valorize poetry as an important part of being an educated person, you couldn't get away from the reality of desire, or rather of the reality that Qing, that passion or feelings, was intimately connected to poetry. From the 3rd century with Cao Zhi, from Tao Yuanming, from Du Fu and Li Bai, all these poets, they're going to have this feelings interwoven through the text of their poems. Feelings and poetry are connected. So in the 3rd century, you have Wu Ji, who lived 261 to 303. He wrote Shi Yuan Qing, right? Poetry follows from feelings. Wow, that's a powerful statement. Poetry follows from feelings. So feelings are the origin of poetry. Think about the novel Hongloumeng. How often do you have poems appearing? How important is gathering to write poetry? For example, the gathering of eating venison and writing poems, or the gathering in snow, which is the same time, right? To write about snow, or to write about a certain flower in a vase. Thus, poetry is the medium through which feelings are expressed. Also, the one realm in which feelings are somewhat expected was in writing. So, whereas in traditional Chinese culture, one might not want to express feelings just in general, you could in writing. So in the Ming-Qing cult of passion, they made feelings, Qing, the central concern of fiction and drama. You see this in Cao Xueqin's Hongloumeng and his Dream of the Red Chamber. Qing was for them a supreme human value, right? And the passion, or Qing, often appeared in poetry, drama, and fiction as a sensual, or yuhua, love between a man and a woman. It was somewhat romantic, right? Now, so moving toward a conclusion, one good example of the cult of Qing is in the writing of Feng Menglong, who lived from 1574 to 1646. He wrote a collection of short stories about feelings. Actually, he called it the history of passion, Qing Shi, the history of passion. That's pretty explicit, isn't it? Just let's write a history of feelings, a history of passion. And in his preface, he wrote this, quote, this is Feng Menglong in the preface of his work. Ever since I was a young man, I have prided myself on being a passion fanatic, a Qing fanatic. Among my friends, I would always bare my soul whenever I meet a person rich in feelings, right? A you qing ren, someone who has feelings. Whenever I meet a person rich in feelings and whose views I do not agree with who I don't agree with, I always try to patiently guide him with passion, with feelings, Qing. Wow. In other words, feelings are valorized in Feng Menglong's writing, and they're employed as a didactic tool. This reminds me of the Buddhist notion that you remove a thorn with a thorn. You remove the problems of feelings through feelings. So in Feng Menglong's works and others, the most common manifestation of passion is seen in the pleasure with women, right? That is, Qing, or passion, is very often, if not always, placed in the realm of seeking pleasure with women, right? So that would be with lovers, sometimes prostitutes. Actually, romance is a form of therapy for scholars who are frustrated with official failures, right? So romantic involvement or sexuality is according to the Ming-Qing cult of Qing, it actually is therapeutic, right? Sex or intimacy is for them more authentic than public life, right? There's something about intimate sexual relationships, according to these intellectuals, that makes it more authentic, more true than public service, right? So an unhappy scholar could indulge in his feelings, his qing, and his sex, right, and his fondness for sex, his haosa, as a way to withdraw from the world of red dust. That is an interesting thing to ponder, right? One becomes romantic to get away from the world of red dust, this Buddhist world of excessive desire. Well, it also can sometimes be a form of political protest. But I think I'll stop here because another concept related to this cult was genuineness, or zhen, and several thinkers championed the virtue of genuineness or authenticity. They called it zhenqing, true passion. I'll stop here and say, as I always do at this time, Juni Shanti Jian Kang, I wish you all good health. If you want to know what happens in the next lecture, stay tuned for the following post. And I should also then again, to your health, Ganbei.